Bom dia a todos, sejam muito bem-vindos, sejam muito bem-vindas. Eu sou Miguel Castro e faço parte da equipe da seção de comércio da Delegação da União Europeia aqui no Brasil. Temos o prazer de dar início à série de workshops online promovidos pela Delegação. Como temos falado com muitos de vocês através das últimas 2 semanas, o objetivo da iniciativa desse workshop é dialogar com as organizações brasileiras a respeito do capítulo de Comércio e Desenvolvimento Sustentável, que integra a parte comercial do Acordo de Associação entre a União Europeia e Mercosul. Esse workshop é um primeiro passo da nossa iniciativa. Estamos construindo 2 iniciativas adicionais. A segunda vai ser uma conferência com a qual visamos ter maior abrangência e convidar a mais atores da sociedade civil, mas também atores que representam o governo, atores que representam mais o setor empresarial.
And also like from the business segment. So this series of workshops were intended to be held live in Brasilia, São Paulo, and Rio de Janeiro in the first months of 2020. However, as you can imagine, due to the pandemic, the project was suspended and resumed exclusively in the virtual modality. This modality was the opportunity to safely and responsibly proceed with the actions, but it certainly poses new challenges of interactions and virtual dialogues to all of us. Today, we started the initiative with the opening table, whose subtitle is The Role of Brazilian Organizations in Implementing the Chapter's Commitment. Good morning, everyone. I would like to begin thanking all of you to putting yourselves available and dedicating your time in this important dialogue that we would like to begin doing some workshops, and that will happen throughout the following weeks. So the engagement of the civil society has always been one of the pillars for the construction of the public policies of the European Union. The signatory members and all the organizations in the civil society, they share this need to work together in order to expand the project and transparency in terms of democratic responsibility. So within this in mind, the European Union tried to create spaces to promote a very open and honest dialogue with the citizens and the organizations of the civil society. So this present initiative is within this vision. So the workshops have the scope to enable an open dialogue and also to inform and also to increase the awareness about the commitments in the chapter related to the trade and sustainable development in the commercial trade of the agreement between the European Union and Mercosul. So the initial expectative was if we could have begun this dialogue in the beginning of the year using a methodology that would enable to have this presential face-to-face conversation. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we had to postpone this and limit to video conferences, but we are sure that we are building up this open space that will enable us to have this fluid dialogue and technical and also informative. So to begin this dialogue, I would like to take this opportunity to bring some specific points that will contextualize the debates that will be developed during the next days. So firstly, I would present the strategy that characterized the actions of the European Union for the following years. So due to the climate change and the crisis related to the pandemic. So firstly, I will show you how the agreement of the association fits into this initiatives and how it's aligned with the work that we are already implementing in Brazil. And finally, we will make some brief considerations about the state of the agreement, the next steps, and the political context in which it's being analyzed. The sustainable development is already part for a very long time of the nucleus of the project in Europe. So all the agreements of the European Union recognize that the economic dimensions, social and environmental as well, must be approached together. For example, our strategy in relation to the sustainable development was launched in 2001. And since 2010, this concept has been integrated in the strategy of Europe 2020. So the sustainable development is strategic for the European Union. For that, we exercise a leadership process that we adopted the Agenda for 2030, developing models of sustainable development for the United Nations and all its objectives. We've taken a leadership position in the implementation of the Agenda 2030 in Europe with all our partners all over the world. We have also played an important leadership role in the negotiation and the conclusion of the Paris Agreement against the climate changes in 2015. So especially today, it's very clear the strategic importance of the sustainable development for the European Union, since it is the structural element in all the transformative policies and with the Green Pact. So this pact that was launched before the pandemic crisis and this growth economic strategy of low carbon, fair and inclusive, that will lead all the nations in Europe for the following years. So the Green Pact is our plan to align Europe with the objective of sustainable development and the Paris Agreement. So the Green Pact, we want to ensure that the European Union will reach the neutrality in terms of climate up to 2050. So the implication of these decisions and the policy formations are important and transformative. So the Green Pact is a strategy that goes beyond the scope of all the classic policies in relation to energy and climate. It approaches many different areas as the circular economy, biodiversity, food, mobility, transportation, and many others. It adopts an approach that is very encompassing in order to reduce all the sources of direct emissions and indirect, and also minimize the overall pressure in the European economy on our environment. Likewise, it's important the social dimension in relation to the Green Pact. It aims to ensure that no one is left behind. That's why we are creating a transitional fund that is fair to provide special assistance to regions and sectors that have been more affected by the transition due to their dependence in terms of fossil fuels like coal. So the intensive industrial processes and gases and also the greenhouse effects. We must encourage diversification in terms of the economy in all these sectors. So one transition for more cleaner sources of energy with the opportunity to requalify opportunities for workers. So this growth strategy becomes even more urgent and necessary in the context post-COVID. It's the ideal moment to transform an urgent challenge in an unique opportunity for a sustainable growth which is also inclusive. For the European Union in the context of post-COVID, the Green Pact is not luxury. It's a lifesaver. The European Union would lose 2 times its mobilized investment in response to the crisis if we moved to help the old economy and not to continue this transformative process to a green economy, which is also sustainable. But our main environmental ambition and the Green Pact and all the recovery plans in the post-COVID scenario will not be effective by one Europe acting isolatedly. All the determinant factors for climate change and the losses of biodiversity and the social challenges produced by the climate changes and also the pandemic, they are global. They are not limited to borders, and they must be encouraged through international cooperation with all our partners. So Brazil, as a global player, is a very important member of the G20, and it's a strategic partner of European Union. European Union is willing to cooperate with Brazil and help the country to harvest all the benefits, to invest in a neutral future towards the climate. We are ready to help all the Brazilian authorities at this difficult moment in order to help through a fast recovery for the country after the crisis related to the COVID. And this will become an opportunity for advancement and not a drawback risk. So within that, I would like to mention some examples of cooperation that are already ongoing. One very useful cooperation tool, which is our strategic partnership program for the implementation of the Paris Agreement that provides assistance ad hoc related to climate policies in all the countries that are not in Europe, but not in the G20 as well. So we would like Brazil and our international partnerships to implement plans of low emissions, robust, clear, and also like domestic strategies for recovery. And this will give our societies a sense of direction and purpose, and will guide investors and companies towards sustainability. So European Union and Brazil has been implementing in partnership with different players projects that aim to build up economic relations that are more sustainable. For example, projects like low carbon business action, actions for low carbon initiatives. And we are getting into our second phase in 2020, and it has proven very well succeeded in the establishment of partnership between European and Brazilian companies for technologies of low emissions. So besides that, so there is another project that related to Latin American and Caribbean. It's a regional project that includes Brazil, and it's being implemented by the ILO, by the the OCDE, and also by the High Commissioner of the United Nations for Human Rights. So this project tends to promote an intelligent and sustainable growth, which is also inclusive in Europe, in Brazil, and the Caribbean, applying responsible business practices in compliance with all the instruments by the United Nations, the ILO, and OCDE. So recently, the partnership of the European Union and the Mercosul gained a different scenario with pillars of development, cooperation, and also this strategic partnership has been consolidated to an economic and political level. And also, we have to create important opportunities for growth that are sustainable for both parts. So in this post-COVID context, more than ever, we need tools like this. So the agreement of the association will not only bring economic benefits, but it will also signal to the world that within an uncertainty scenario, so we must be partners and we must coordinate with the biggest economic globes in the world. And through the economic point of view, so the European Union today is the second largest business partner with Brazil, and obviously like the first investor. So Brazil is the big export agricultural products to the European Union and the third largest destiny of European investments. And the main reason for that is that it generates jobs, benefits, and also for other European Union entities. So the economic and social integration is very high and may be expanded broadly due to this agreement. And then lastly, so the agreement is based that commerce cannot be done in the detriment of the environment, the climate, and also like the work conditions. But on the other hand, it should promote the sustainable development. Within this context, the two parts have agreed in dive deeper in its commercial relation in such a way to contribute the social and sustainable development, and also have their multilateral commitments in terms of labor, work, and the environment. So the agreement pays attention to the guarantee that the natural resources and the forest products, fishery, and wildlife is based in principles that are sustainable. So the agreement aims to prevent the commerce of products that are harvested illegally and promote the commerce of products that contribute to the conservation of biodiversity. Besides that, it will promote the implementation of many multilateral agreements in relation to the environment signed by the countries in Mercosul and the European Union. Also, the Paris Agreement in the scope of climate change and the Convention cities in relation to the biodiversity. So European Union and Mercosur commit to promote the voluntary acceptance of companies of business and responsible practice, as much as in the social aspects and also environmental issues. Both parts commit to respect the rules of the ILO in terms of the forced labor and also child labor, non-discrimination of labor, the freedom of association, and the right of collective bargaining. Besides that, the parts will take on the compromise in the health and safety areas related to work and inspection of work as well. The commercial part of the agreement includes dispositions that promote the role of the indigenous populations in the supply chains which are sustainable, and the cooperation in social projects that involve those communities. One very important aspect is that the agreement will promote the power of the civil society in order to monitor. So civil society and the European Union and the Mercosur will have a very specific role in the follow-up and monitoring of the agreement when it comes to the environmental commitments and also labor commitments. The parts will establish consultation mechanisms along with the civil society to complement all the efforts in the application of the chapter for the sustainable development. These elements of the agreement between the European Union and the Mercosur, not only in compliance with the Green Pact, but it changes it into a tool that may contribute to reach the objectives of the Green Pact. One example, the agreement between the UE and the MC has a commitment to implement effectively the Paris Agreement. And also we have some important areas of the Green Pact in relation to the circular economy, biodiversity, waste management, and responsible business conduct, and recognize the right of all parts to take measures and measure their legislation in the precaution principle. Likewise, the agreement contributes to advancement of the objectives of the Green Pact when it liberalizes many green products, and also we will provide some environmental services, and this will guide like green procurement and also sustainable practices, rules of the right of property, and better inspection structures will help a broader use of the transference of environmental technology and green. And lastly, as I mentioned in the beginning, I would like to make a few considerations in relation to the status of the validation of the agreement and the political context in which we are finding in Europe and in the Mercosur. So after the disclosure in June 2019, in relation to the closure of the agreement after 20 years, So we are now providing a technical revision of the agreement. Once we finish this revision, the text of the agreement must be translated in 23 official languages of the European Union. So this phase is ongoing and has not been finished. And when it comes to the approval process, it's very important to clarify that the validation project of international agreements are determined case by case, and the process that shall be defined depends on the final content of the agreement. When it comes to the trade part of this agreement, it's part of an agreement of the association that is much bigger and deals with political and cooperation issues. And the ratification of similar agreements concluded by the European Union in the past demanded the validation of the signatory members following the rules and constitutional internal procedures, and also the approval of the Council and the Parliament in Europe. So the approval and ratification in the European Union and all the signatory members, and also the Brazil and the Mercosul countries, is a political process in which we evaluate and discuss different players. As is well known, all the environmental topics like deforestation are extremely important for our citizens, for our member states, and for the European Union in its whole. So the recent political manifestations from some member states and all the negative repercussion in Europe and many other organizations in the civil society. So the European Union position is very particular in the relation of the Amazon, and it reflects very clearly these disturbances. So this factor, no doubt, it is and will be a very critical element in the ratification of the agreement. As it has been explained previously by the executive member of the UE, and now we have one member, Vladimir. We do have in the agreement with Mercosur one very progressive chapter that refers to the trade and as sustainable development, but we must engage even strongly with all our partners in the Mercosur in order to find lifelong partnerships that are threatening in regards to the deforestation. So now we would like to invite Brazil to take important measures to refrain the deforestation and combat illegal activities when it comes to mining and agriculture that are contributing to the loss of the green cover, and looking for solutions for the sustainable development in the region of Amazon. Also deal with the deforestation. It's a very important part of our biodiversity strategy. So in it, we confirm our intention to take measures to promote imports in the supply chain that are compatible and also sustainable with the maneuver of the forest, and respecting also the Brazilian sovereignty. But the European Union is compromised to cooperate with Brazil in order to work in a partnership in order to advance in this agenda. This dialogue with the National Council of the Legal Amazonia, presided by the Vice President Mourão, is inscribed in this direction. Progress in this area are crucial in order to advance for the signature and the ratification of the agreement of the association between the European Union and Mercosur. The agreement is based in the shared values between European Union and Mercosur, such as democracy, respect, and the promotion of human rights, and the model of like free trade and the idealization of also in the principles of sustainable and social and environmental development. Within that, it's necessary that all parts and players contribute from the beginning for the validation of all these common values. As I mentioned, the engagement of the civil society has always been a crucial axis in the construction of our public policies. This position is also valid in the context of the association agreement. All the players commit themselves to work together. So the values and all the compromise don't stay in paper. So the agreement is not a final end. On the other hand, it's a start point within this context. So the civil society is a very important player. And we believe that the agreement may become an important tool that will give power and strengthen the role of the civil society already has in Brazil. Therefore, I would like to invite all of you to participate actively in all the discussions that will unfold in the workshops. I hope that with this initiative, we begin a fruitful dialogue that will enable to identify the opportunities and the commitments of the agreement. And all the organizations have already implemented in Brazil may raise the bar and make this project successful. For us, it's one more challenge that will enable us to strengthen our ties with the civil society in Brazil, reminding you that the agreement is not between governments and not between politicians. It's an agreement between societies that aspire to work together and develop their own economies, promoting societies that are better and more fair, and also with a more balanced world in terms of the nature. So I wish you all a very good work days for the following weeks. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, embaixador, pela introdução.
So thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for this opening remarks. I'd like to remind you that you can ask your questions using the chat, and they will be systematized and grouped and then addressed to the panelists. And now, continuing, I will pass the floor to Michele Villani, who is the head of the Trade Commission in Brazil. And he will make his presentation in English. So remind you that if you need simultaneous translation, you must click in the globe on the lower bar, and you have to click into Portuguese. So Michele, the floor is yours.
Bom dia. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Right. Welcome. Let me welcome everybody, all members from civil society and the private sector to this opening workshop. We have, as it was explained and as it will be explained even better later on, we will have 3 thematic workshops which will follow this opening workshop, because our objective is to have a dialogue with you, a dialogue with civil society, which is very dear to the EU principles. And we would like to have
de todos os nossos princípios, então nós gostaríamos também de ter esse diálogo com relação à sustentabilidade. É um assunto muito importante nesses dias e é uma questão que vai ajudá-los também a movê-los à frente com relação às suas agendas em relação à sustentabilidade e com todas as partes, com as autoridades e na Europa e com todas as instituições que são responsáveis. Nós estamos querendo também ter esse diálogo sobre sustentabilidade porque é crucial, como o embaixador disse. São questões que vão fazer toda a diferença nas questões de aceitabilidade e com todos os pontos do acordo. Então, deixa eu focar aqui com as partes principais que serão incorporadas nesse acordo entre a União Europeia e o Mercosul. E nós temos um capítulo sobre comércio. É um acordo sobre comércio que várias associações fazem parte, tanto na Europa como no Mercosul. Então, deixa eu dar uma visão geral para vocês sobre esse capítulo, falando algumas coisas sobre o escopo e o princípio e os objetivos. E depois eu vou falar também sobre os compromissos desse capítulo. Então, eu vou terminar me referindo a algumas questões relacionadas à consulta e diálogo, oportunidades que serão abertas por conta deste acordo, junto deste capítulo específico que eu mencionei. Então, basicamente, o que nós pensamos, a nossa filosofia, o pensamento que está por trás de tudo isso, nós sabemos que um investimento não pode ser feito em detrimento de um desenvolvimento sustentável. E é claro que o desenvolvimento precisa estar incluído em todas as relações comerciais, e isso está relacionado às práticas de trabalho e práticas ambientais, e que são praticamente relevantes para o comércio e para os investimentos. Isso é muito importante porque existem algumas dimensões que estão ligadas aos aspectos ambientais, sociais e econômicos. E todos eles são interdependentes e reforçam. E é claro que todas as partes reafirmam o seu compromisso em promover esse comércio de uma forma que possa contribuir em 3 dimensões diferentes para o desenvolvimento sustentável. Então são as questões dos objetivos da União Europeia, como vocês todos estão cientes, e é claro que existem também todos os compromissos multilaterais que estão relacionados ao trabalho e ao meio ambiente. Então, esses são os princípios em linhas gerais e, eu diria, todos os objetivos desse capítulo. É claro, nós temos também que estabelecer níveis bem efetivos em práticas de proteção ambiental e de trabalho, e isso não pode enfraquecer os níveis de proteção domésticas, e não nós precisamos promover investimentos em comércio. É claro que todas as partes precisam ser bem transparentes na questão de implementar medidas para proteger o trabalho e o meio ambiente, e eles farão isso de uma forma transparente, garantindo e aumentando a participação de todos. Esses são os princípios gerais do capítulo. Então, esse é o contexto, eu diria, o escopo e o objetivo desse capítulo, mas vamos mudar para a segunda parte dessa minha visão geral, que se relaciona com as 7 áreas que existem provisões e compromissos foram tomados sob esse capítulo. A primeira é relacionada ao trabalho. E é claro que existem padrões multilaterais e existem também, nós temos essas questões relacionadas à Organização Mundial do Trabalho. Essa é a referência, esse é o ponto de partida, e eles devem ser as principais diretrizes a serem seguidas e os principais compromissos nesse capítulo no que se refere ao trabalho. Com um foco, basicamente, no trabalho decente e também com as proteções do mais alto nível relacionadas ao trabalho. E quando nós falamos sobre isso, nós falamos sobre as questões de saúde ocupacional e também trabalhamos dos horários de trabalho, as jornadas de trabalho, os locais de trabalho, e quando nós falamos também sobre inspeções de trabalho sem discriminação. Então, isso é a agenda do trabalho decente, que é a referência. Mas, claro que os padrões de trabalho também são outros padrões muito importantes que precisam ser observados de acordo com as informações da Organização Internacional do Trabalho. E isso, não podemos lidar com trabalho forçado e compulsório, precisamos eliminar isso e também eliminar o trabalho infantil e também eliminar a discriminação. Esses são os princípios gerais relacionados ao trabalho que todas as partes se comprometem. E isso está relacionado com a Organização Internacional do Trabalho. E isso será implementado, todos os protocolos, e serão ratificados por todas as partes, incluindo tudo o que venha a ser atualizado. Então, essa é a primeira área das 7 áreas que eu gostaria de comentar. A segunda é o meio ambiente. Então, isso cai sob medida como uma dimensão importante para o desenvolvimento relacionada às questões sociais e ambientais. Então, o acordo bilateral com relação ao meio ambiente, ele é bem claro, e é a referência, e as partes, e todas as desavenças, elas estão relacionadas e já foram observadas pela Assembleia das Nações Unidas, por programas das Nações Unidas. E isso geraram esses acordos bilaterais. Essas são as referências nesse capítulo. E esse acordo são a resposta para a comunidade internacional, para lidarmos com todos os desafios globais ligados ao meio ambiente. E as partes, claro, têm que analisar e ver quais são os investimentos que precisam ser feitos de acordo com as políticas ambientais e que se comprometam efetivamente com a implementação desses compromissos. As partes também, claramente, nessa área, se comprometem a dividir informação e também cooperar. Esse acordo de cooperação é muito importante e nós vamos ver isso em outras partes, em outros capítulos, em outras áreas desse capítulo. A terceira área é a área do comércio e mudanças climáticas. E nós vemos que aqui a referência é o arcabouço legal das mudanças climáticas das Nações Unidas e o Fórum Internacional que está observando as mudanças climáticas e o papel de cada um nessas medidas. As partes aqui, ambas as partes, tanto a União Europeia e o Mercosul, se comprometem a implementar o que foi definido pela União Europeia em termos de mudança climática e também o que foi referido pelo embaixador. Nós temos um compromisso no artigo 6 desse capítulo, no que se refere à Convenção da União Europeia e o Acordo de Paris. E as partes vão promover a sua contribuição positiva com emissões reduzidas de gases de efeito estufa e proteções ao meio ambiente. Então, nesse capítulo relacionado ao meio ambiente, as partes concordem, e isso no nível regional e no nível internacional, e particularmente no Fórum das Nações Unidas, no que se refere às mudanças climáticas. Então, esses compromissos e os mesmos nós vamos ver na quarta área, que é a área de biodiversidade, onde nós vemos as convenções foram utilizadas também como referência, e nós temos uma convenção de biodiversidade e nós vemos acordos internacionais para os recursos genéticos. Então, essas são as referências que as partes estão compromissadas em seguir. Nessa área, as partes também vão implementar efetivamente, se comprometem com esses pontos das convenções internacionais e esses instrumentos que já se apresentam. Então, as partes também se comprometem em cooperar, e tanto no nível regional como num escopo internacional. Então, aqui, novamente, nós vemos um compromisso com a cooperação entre as partes. E a quinta área é o manejo sustentável das florestas e também a recuperação das florestas. Isso é o que é o princípio que está por baixo disso tudo. E as partes aqui encorajam o comércio de produtos sustentáveis da floresta e o manejo sustentável, e também incluir as comunidades, incluindo as comunidades indígenas na cadeia de valor e também os produtos não madeireiros. Então, esses são compromissos importantes neste artigo. Uma outra participação importante aqui, um compromisso, é de implementar o combate do comércio ilegal e da desmatamento ilegal. Então, esses são os pontos que estão aqui no artigo 8 do manejo sustentável das florestas. A sexta área é com relação à pesca e aquicultura sustentável. Então, as partes aqui, as partes se comprometem ao manejo sustentável com relação aos recursos biológicos e dos ecossistemas marítimos, e também para manejar a aquicultura. Esse é um outro ponto muito importante, e o ponto aqui, os instrumentos são os que vêm das Nações Unidas e da FAO, e as partes se comprometem a implementar. Então, as partes também se comprometem a cooperar ativamente com o manejo da pesca sustentável em locais regionais e promover o desenvolvimento sustentável e a prática da aquicultura sustentável. E a última área, o nosso compromisso aqui está relacionado ao manejo da cadeia de suprimentos sustentável, e isso está bem ligado ao setor privado, porque esse manejo sustentável da cadeia de suprimento precisa ser feito de acordo com práticas de comércio e de negócios responsáveis e sustentáveis, que sejam também tenham a cooperação do setor privado. E, é claro, vamos cuidar da disseminação de instrumentos internacionais e promover a adoção de empresas responsáveis e as práticas de negócio responsáveis. Então, esse é o ponto muito importante para nós, num contexto do setor privado, sabendo que a referência é a OECD e os processos de diligência que inspiraram o comportamento dessa prática de negócios responsável no setor privado. Então, todas essas áreas que eu acabei de descrever, elas são os compromissos que estão neste capítulo deste Acordo de Comércio. Talvez eu devesse concluir aqui essa apresentação, já que eu dei uma ideia geral sobre o escopo, os princípios e das áreas, essas séries principais que esse capítulo foca. Eu deveria concluir aqui falando sobre o diálogo e a consulta que é estabelecida neste capítulo. Essas são provisões muito importantes e são arranjos muito importantes também, porque as partes aqui têm um comitê que foi estabelecido, e nesse fórum ambas as autoridades elas se encontram e discutem a implementação e a aplicação deste capítulo. Então, isso facilita a monitoramento da implementação desse capítulo. Em relação a esse acordo e esse comitê do TSD, a sociedade civil precisa interagir com o subcomitê, fornecendo as suas observações e também participando de maneira ativa e informando esse subcomitê sobre quaisquer posições relacionadas às áreas de sustentabilidade. Então, esse subcomitê também vai se encontrar de forma regular e vai publicar relatórios após cada encontro, e esses relatórios serão basicamente, eles serão públicos. Então, esse é um elemento que a sociedade civil pode interagir. É claro que podemos encontrar algumas dificuldades na aplicação desse capítulo ou com relação à interpretação do mesmo. Então, é por isso que existem alguns mecanismos de resolução de disputas nesse capítulo, e esses mecanismos de resolução de desavenças ou de disputas também foi abordado. Então, as partes devem consultar isso para poderem concordar na interpretação e na aplicação deste capítulo de uma forma que seja satisfatória mutuamente. Então, primeiro, eles precisam consultar e também tentar chegar a um acordo e ver como esse capítulo será implementado e da maneira como ele será gerenciado. Então, podem se referir a especialistas. Então, em 120 dias, esse painel de especialistas será composto por 3 especialistas e eles são, como eu disse, especialistas em sustentabilidade e particularmente nas áreas em que as consultas venham a acontecer. Então, esse painel, esses especialistas, eles vão lidar e vão emitir um relatório em 3 meses depois que forem formados. E também teremos um relatório final após 2 meses depois desse relatório interino. É importante mencionar aqui que em todas essas instâncias, no que diz respeito ao relatório interino, e o que, a propósito, será também publicado e disponível para o público, a sociedade tem um papel importante, porque a sociedade civil, ela organiza em grupos de consulta, num formato que todas as provisões institucionais e tudo que é referido nesse acordo a importância de termos aqui uma consulta no nível doméstico e também submeter as observações e comentários nesse relatório interino e também no relatório final. Então, era basicamente isso que eu gostaria de cobrir com a minha apresentação. Eu deveria concluir aqui dizendo que o papel da sociedade civil organizada em grupos de aconselhamento doméstico é importante para a implementação de todos os provisionamentos aqui, e porque as partes não são as autoridades, mas as partes, como o embaixador disse, em termos econômicos, em termos civis, todos somos partes e todos podemos ajudar nesse processo de cooperação e trabalharmos juntos, uns aos outros, juntamente com as autoridades para implementar esse capítulo. Então, a parte mais importante é implementar. E a sociedade também tem um papel importante de monitorar e ver como tudo isso está relacionado com o subcomitê. Precisamos interagir, monitorar a implementação e aplicação desse capítulo, mas também vai ajudar nas questões que dizem respeito a implementação de todos os mecanismos, mas, por favor, interajam, submetam as suas observações e também para o nosso painel de especialistas. Então, basicamente, esse era o meu trabalho difícil hoje. Me desculpem falar isso durante tanto tempo para apresentar esse capítulo para vocês. Eu levei um pouco mais de tempo do que eu achava, mas eu acredito que eu consegui dar uma ideia geral sobre os princípios e o papel da sociedade civil na implementação deste capítulo. Muito obrigado a todos.
E seguimos rapidamente com...
And we would like to move on with Victoriana, and who is the specialist hired by the Commission to provide support in this initiative, and she will make a brief presentation about the methodology that will be developed in the follow-ups workshops. So good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the presence, and I would like the panelists, and I put myself available. You can send me emails to clarify any doubts. And today I will talk a little bit about the political context and the content of the agreement. So I would like to just talk briefly about the methodology of what we want to do for the next 3 days. So firstly, this methodology is being set up by the team of the European Union with me and my friend Fernanda Cristina, and we are here available for a dialogue. So the initiative is a series of workshops that have begun at the beginning of the year, and that we thought to have them live in Brasilia, Rio de Janeiro, and São Paulo, and due to the pandemic, this project was suspended and resumed now in September, when we began to adapt towards a virtual reality. So this virtual reality was the opportunity to proceed with the actions in a safely and responsible manner. And obviously, we have new challenges in terms of interaction and dialogue in this virtual environment. The initial proposal was that each workshop would have the presence of 30 entities. So the virtual modality enable us to invite more people and open for a dialogue and enroll more people. So the number of participants increased and enable us to have different regions in Brazil to participate if we were conducting these workshops live. So in this virtual modality enable us to have like experts and people also from Brussels, and they will make their own presentations in the next events that are yet to come, and enable a contact with all these experts that have been directly involved for a very long time with the rounds of discussions for the agreement. We know that the virtual environment creates distraction and poses like less interaction with the participants. So please bear with us. But we are here open for suggestions once we will have 3 next meetings. So we limited the beginning in the opening, which demanded like objectivity from us, but the next encounters we will have them on the next Thursdays with a different characteristic, with the space of participation, and therefore we thought to have them lasting for 2 hours. So this initial series is a very first try to get in contact, talking about the specifics of articles of the chapter of the. And as it has been proposed by the Brazilian delegation, to enable an informed debate and more participant with the European Union and the organizations, but also promote a dialogue and an interchange among all the organizations, and also like create awareness about the commitments. And then new organizations may become more powerful and become important players in the implementation of this chapter. And so the association would like to gather subsidies and also new inputs for the next stages of this workshop. So it's worth mentioning that this initiative, it doesn't want to promote a dialogue for the whole agreement. We wouldn't have enough time, but just talk more about the chapter in relation to trade and sustainable development. We've sent some documents to you when we sent the invitation. We have some spreadsheets and blueprints, and also we have a translation, which is not the official translation, but it's what we have available for the last version of this chapter. We understand that this chapter is very innovative because it brings like commitments and challenges and subjects of the 3 pillars of the workshops and their requirements in relation to the sustainable developments and also the observance of labor rights and human rights, and also the participation of the civil society in monitoring and inspection of the agreement. These 3 themes will be talked in 3 different workshops as we sent to you in the agenda, but it's important mentioning here before we get into the workshop is that the organizations, we have already begun a dialogue, and it has started with delegation at the beginning of the year, and we promote a contact, initial contact, and from this initial conversations, we gather some information, ideas, how to conduct this initiative. At this moment, in this virtual modality that we are in presently, we send invitation to 130 Brazilian organizations, as we've said before, organizations with different roles. And we had more than 200 invited people, and also using social media, looking for transparency in this initiative. Yesterday, without taking into account recent numbers, we had a total of 130 enrollments representing 108 organizations. Within this profile, 45% are men and 35% women. We also had a participation based, and the biggest participation was the state of São Paulo, followed by the Federal District, Rio de Janeiro, and Minas Gerais. Also 12 other states, highlighting Amazonas, Goiás, Pará, and Ceará, among others. So basically, we've identified 4 different groups, 4 big profiles of people who enrolled that will be with us in the next days. 49.5% organizations of civil society, among them 49.5%. We have 29 organizations that dialogue with social subjects, 25% of the civil society that dialogues with human rights, economic rights, and also labor issues. And besides the civil society group, we have another group, 33% of business organizations and companies, 12% of academic centers and research centers, and 6% of other categories in which we encompass consultants, international organizations, and others. So this is the profile of the entities that we will be dialoguing in the next dialogues. And in this past week, we had the opportunity to promote some dialogues and virtual conversations with other organizations and bodies. And the idea was to present the series of events, trying to understand what are their interests in this initiative and how this is binding with the practices of all the other organizations. So we highlight that we have identified, obviously, that the organizations have different profiles with different understanding and demands in relation to the agreement. But the idea was to reinforce that each organization has an important role in order to qualify the debate and use this political space that is now open, and also to bring like different contexts in which their organization is inserted. So with all this diversity of enrolled people, we believe that it's quite possible to have a very good representativity, considering this universe of participants that go from like an organization of local communities that work with sustainable production, fishery, and also big players that are involved, business organizations, labor organization, unions. And besides that, we heard from the participants in this past days that we conducted some conversations that many organizations understand that the agreement is far from these entities because they do not promote international trade. We believe that we have to face, and we will have the opportunity here to demystify and go a little bit deeper in the workshops to understand better and clarify doubts in regards to the interpretation of the agreement. That's why the workshop is the very first part, is information, and also to clarify some of these points, but also we will promote some other discussion. It's not only to inform, but also it's a space for participation in which all the organizations may suggest, recommend, discuss, and also bring questions and raise, and we will talk about the group of Brussels, followed by debates in which all the participants will be guided to small parallel rooms, and each group will have about 30 minutes to dive deep into the discussion and elaborate some contributions. So this is the idea. So then bring all the contributions afterwards. We'll mediate the groups, and we will have one person in each group mediating the group. So each group will choose a speaker, and then bring this. And why do we want to do that in the plenary session? Because we understand that some questions may arise, some points will be raised, and this will be addressed to the delegation. So we will have experts from Brussels, Brazil, and the European Union will provide the answers, and also based on the doubts. So just finishing, and I'm about to close here, we hope to see you in the next 3 days of meetings. We will have the meetings every Thursday from 10:30 to 12:30. The first one will talk about environment, international trade, and the second one is on the 29th of October. We'll talk about labor conditions and also supply changes and international trade. And the last one, November 5, we will talk about monitoring and implementation of the agreement and the participation of the civil society. The last workshop, its scope is to talk about controversies and chapters that may arise, and also the enforcement. So all the workshops, as have been mentioned, basically we will study about the chapter of this agreement with a panel of specialists. The exhibits, we will have European Union, Brussels, and Brazil, and we will also have the support with the representatives from the civil society as well. So we understand that the process is a result because it gives a political space that is open, and we can count with the participation of all of you. And we understand that the challenges is for the next 3 days, considering our moment and this pandemic context and all the commitments that every one of us have. But we hope that you feel part of this initiative, engage, and use this space that is now open. Once that this chapter is complex and it demands some qualified discussion. We would like to thank all of you, and we are here available to clear any doubts that you may have. And I take the opportunity, we will send you a form till the end of the day. Please answer this questionnaire for your participation for the next workshops, so we can organize the groups. And we need this, and we need that to set up the virtual room. So thank you very much for your participation. So thank you, Victoriana. So we took the questions, but we hope that you have lots of questions, because during the workshop sessions, we will promote a dialogue, and we'll be capable to dialogue and go a little bit deeper in the discussion. So now I will pass the floor to Fernanda Franco, who is also a specialist, and she will address some of the initial questions. So good morning, everyone. I hope that you can hear me well. So we are a little bit ahead of the time. I will try to organize the questions, just clarifying that the questions that you posing to us, they will be analyzed, read, and filed for further analysis. So we would like to have your participation using the chats. In relation to the questions, we've had some here, and I believe that I will only have one round of questions due to the restraints of time. So to the members of the panel, so the questions that come, they are in three big blocks. One block, which is it's within the political context. In the Brazilian scenario, so how the European Union understands the participation of the civil society in Brazil in monitoring and implementation of the agreement, and face to the current political scenario that the country is living. In the same block, in political context, there is also another question. Why the agreement has been facing some resistance in the European context? So what is actually, we're seeing some repulse to the agreement from European parliaments. There is another block that we received is in relation to technical questions in regards to the agreement. So there are questions, what kind of instruments and safeguards the agreement foresees that will ensure the non-commercialization of trade products that come from the deforestation when it comes like to cattle or soy, and what are the instruments in terms of incentive for the social, environmental, economic diversity that comes from the production of local traditional communities, indigenous populations. And also, when it comes like to instruments of the agreement, I know that I'm bringing it like in general lines, but the panelists may choose how to address and answer these questions. But when it comes like to the technical aspects, there is a question here, how, by any chance, the agreement address practices of like corruption and fraud that have been identified in some of the productive chains in like tender products. What does the agreement foresees in relation to illegal practices of these and other chains? We also have some questions within the political context. So the agreement addresses how like to combat like slave labor and child labor and deforestation and the burning of forests that are currently happening. And lastly, there is one question in regards to trade, considering like the trade flows between the Mercosul and the European Union. How does the agreement facilitate and take care for the export, do not migrate to environments or commercial partners that have standards that are less demanding than the European Union? So just like summing up, due to the restraints of time and considering that we will only have one round of questions, basically were these the questions that came to us via chat, reminding you that the participation in the workshops will get a little bit deeper in this issue. So now I'll pass the floor to the panelists. So I will try to answer these questions, and also like Michele So as Fernanda mentioned and Victoriana also mentioned, the most important part here is the door that we have open now to promote the dialogue with the civil society in such a way that we can build up all these public policies and promoting this dialogue with the civil society. And the agreement tries to organize this idea. So through these dialogues, we will be able to do that, to hear what are the demands in the negotiation parts, but also like the parts, the European Union and the Mercosul and Brazil, that gives the opportunity to its civil society to encourage and promote this dialogue. And we are trying to make this partnership even stronger, and we want to do this together. And we will do that in the next 3 workshops that we will have. And afterwards, we want to connect all these discussions with the civil society in Brazil and the civil society in Europe, because some of the issues are common to both groups. So the agreement is precisely that. As I mentioned before, it's not an end point, it's just a start point. And the agreement will create the possibility that all these issues and the dialogue will be fostered. And this is the rule for us to work, guiding us to a future that includes the civil society more and more. Without this, so the agreement wouldn't make any sense, and we wouldn't have, we will only have results like for leaders and political parties. So we believe that the agreement will create these possibilities, and the workshops that we are going to have will enable us to do that. So logically, this is a specific point. This is the first meeting. We are focused in the dialogue, and we have the delegation and all the other organizations in Europe and the Brazilian organizations. But this dialogue, we must include other groups like in the trade in Brazil, because they are the core part. And like the Ministry of Economics and other ministries. So moreover, when we wanted to promote this conference, we have the reference like to establish a contact with the Brazilian government. And I believe that this is an opportunity for the Brazilian civil society, on one hand, the European institutions also to participate and involve everyone, and the Brazilian government. So what we want to build up and what we want to make happen is an exercise for the preparation, for the application of the agreement. And we want to keep this door open, and we will sit with you. And also we would like to sit like face to face, but because of the COVID, we couldn't do that. But now we are willing to do that. And this is what we will do. We will hear all the comments. We'll try to answer some of the questions that you may pose, and also make the necessary improvements and see how we can work to find the best solution. So what are the main concerns from the European community? Are pretty much the same ones that we have here, in particular in regard to environment and sustainable development, and all the discussions that we've had in Este and the European Parliament in relation to sustainability. This is always present, and obviously the questions that we now have, they are in line with everything that is being discussed with the parliament, with many different countries, and also like the inform that was presented to the French government. And now what we see is that what they want to see is if we are promoting an agreement with a partner that is going to be viable, maybe take a little longer, but it has to be viable. So, and this is something that raises a question in regards to the commitment of sustainability. So the dialogue has begun. This year we've had a very fruitful dialogue with the creation of the Amazon Council. And we've had many different meetings, and you all know that the Vice President is in the Council, and we've had the opportunity to talk. And the Brazilian government also is part of the Amazonian Council. They gave us a go sign, and we will produce the results that the European society as a whole needs to have these results in order to believe that this agreement and this partnership that we want to establish with Brazil will be successful. So for us, the agreement, not only it exists, and it's a clear sign that the Brazilian government wants to proceed. And if you remember last year, due to the end of the negotiation, many observers here in Brazil and in the European Union said that it's a new government presided by Bolsonaro would leave the Paris Agreement as many other partners, such as the United States. This was a question that we had at that time and a petition that we had received. And then, due to the commitment that is clearly established with the agreement between the European Union and Mercosul, so the president rectified that the Brazil will stay in the agreement and comply with the Paris Agreement. So this is a result of this agreement. So this is what we want to do, that the principles and the applications are very clearly established. So if the Brazilian government wants this agreement, and we believe that the Brazilian government wants it, so we will have to comply with all the elements in the agreement and provide the answers for the questions that you may have. So we believe that the agreement will be an instrument that is very useful in this direction. And then we have some more technical questions that we may be able to answer in the workshops. But the clear message is that this dialogue is useful. So this dialogue with the civil society is essential. We want to hear you, your suggestions. We also will be taking notes. What are the main concerns that you may have, but would like to encourage you to engage in a positive way, because I believe that the agreement will be much better than without the agreement. So main concerns of the civil society has mentioned in terms of sustainability, and in regards to the indigenous population and the sustainable use of the land and illegal activities, they are all well mentioned in the agreement, and we can move forward, and the agreement will be signed and then rectified. But I insist, and this is the message to the Brazilian government, we must see some results when it comes to the Brazilian authorities in subjects that are so important as the deforestation and the illegal activities that happen in the Amazon. So the dialogue that we have with the government is very positive. And within this dialogue, I believe, and this is the will of the Brazilian government, to count on the civil society. And we will do the same thing as we do in Europe. Without you, we cannot move forward. And we want to promote this dialogue and use this for our next steps. So please present your suggestions, and we will try to answer them in a more ordained way. And in the next 3 workshops, and then we will have a final conference in which we will take note of all the main concerns and work in this same direction. So I don't know if Michele or John, anyone would like to say anything. Muito obrigado, senhor embaixador. Eu acredito que o senhor tenha abordado tudo. Esse contexto geral e algumas perguntas específicas. Claro que nós teremos essa oportunidade para falar sobre as perguntas técnicas nos nossos workshops temáticos que virão. Então, nós vamos responder isso no lugar apropriado e nos workshops temáticos. Mas deixa eu dizer simplesmente aqui e apenas sublinhar algumas pontos chaves aqui que estão sendo abordados e com relação às medidas salvaguardas ligadas à produção de carne e de soja. e os aspectos de biodiversidade e as questões de corrupção ou também de madeira ilegal. Essas não são questões técnicas que têm uma provisão específica nesse capítulo do acordo. Existem capítulos específicos que são diretamente ou indiretamente relacionados a isso. Então, em segundo lugar, nós temos também a possibilidade de um diálogo, como já foi mencionado. Então, esse diálogo ele vai ser promovido entre as autoridades e com as autoridades e também com a sociedade civil. E, no nosso lado, nós vamos fazer isso pelo lado europeu. E as autoridades vão fazer aqui com as autoridades no Brasil. Então, esses dois grupos de aconselhamento terão que conversar. E sempre que tivermos alguma observação ou algum específico com relação à aplicação, o provisionamento, isso precisa ser levado por um diálogo, e esse subcomitê, nos dois lados, está aberto também para a sociedade civil. Então, o diálogo se mantém. As questões principais em termos de implementação de todo esse provisionamento, e esse diálogo ele será promovido e encorajado pelo subcomitê, mas principalmente com a participação da sociedade civil. E eu vou terminar aqui. Quando nós tivermos algumas questões técnicas que tenham a ver com a implementação desse capítulo especificamente, desses compromissos, então nós temos que conversar, temos que dialogar, precisamos discutir com a sociedade civil, mas também entre as autoridades, porque o fórum apropriado para interpretação e aplicação e para encontrarmos as soluções. E nós precisamos observar qualquer desequilíbrio. Então, esse capítulo aqui, especificamente, é o capítulo mais avançado que já conseguimos chegar e negociamos com o FDA e com outras autoridades. E esse capítulo, ele é uma caixa de ferramentas e tem todos os ingredientes para abordar tecnicamente pelo lado comercial e lidar com todas as questões de desequilíbrio de sustentabilidade. Então, esse era o que eu gostaria de falar em complemento ao que o senhor embaixador falou, mas nós teremos os nossos temáticos, os nossos workshops temáticos, e que nós vamos ter o apoio também do pessoal de Bruxelas. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado a todos. Lembrando, vamos continuar esse diálogo.
Reminding you that we will continue this and we will talk about the technical issues during the technical workshop. So all the questions that you send, we'll get back to all of them. So please, this is we will have like a long course, a dinner, like first a course, second course, and then like we will have like the dessert, which is the implementation and monitoring. I know that you all have lots of questions, and we want to promote the discussion with all of you. So we would like to thank all of you, and we enforce the participation in the next 3 workshops.